Well, fancy seeing you here. Rush to the West End Network. Hope you're all safe and well. Happy Tuesday. Um, Now, with the Liverpool game and the Man City game recently, we've passed the halfway stage of the Premier League. So I thought head teacher Budden could do a half-term report on our first team squad individually, going through them and just reviewing their half season so far. Really, it's quite a simple idea, and it's open the forum to you guys. You will agree or disagree with, no doubt, some of my ratings, some of my scores, and feel free to put yours in as well. Let's make it a bit of a mass debate. It is a Tuesday. Let's cheer ourselves up. So let's go for the goalkeepers. Now, obviously, we'll come to Wes eventually, but a strange first half of the season where both of our first team goalkeepers, not really necessarily number one or two. Obviously, Areola went into the beginning of the season as number one, and then some poor performances pretty much forced Lopetegui's hand to bring in Fabianski, and he, to be honest, would have probably kept the number one jersey going until, unfortunately, obviously recently he had the concussion injury. What's going to be interesting when we come to the Aston Villa game in the Cup on Saturday is who goes between the sticks, because usually under previous regimes you have a situation where one is a Cup goalkeeper, one is the league goalkeeper. Now, we may only have one cup game coming up if we lose to Aston Villa at the weekend. And with technically Fabianski would have been returned back from his concussion protocol on Monday. I think it's the 5th or the 6th. Might have been yesterday, actually. From the 10-day period, the clear day. So he should be available for the Aston Villa game. So whether he play him, obviously Areola's come in for the last couple of games. I don't necessarily see any of the goals really being his fault that he's conceded recently. The 9 goals in the last 2 games against a rampant Liverpool side and a very clinical Man City side. So it's been a strange, if you look at it, Fabianski hasn't lost his jacket, hasn't lost his number one shirt, but Areola did. So for me, when looking at the sort of like the school report, I can't see many sort of issues with Fabianski losing any of the goals that he's conceded. I think, there's been several times he's been man of the match as well and saved us. So I think a B- in terms of his half-term report so far. And in terms of Areola, maybe a C+ in the fact that Areola lost his number one shirt at the beginning, sort of midway through the first half, so i.e. the first quarter of the season, due to some poor games, really. So I'd rank Fabianski just above Areola, although he did have a good couple of games recently and kept the goal lines down, really, in all honesty. But they're pretty much on par, I think, in terms of each other. Wes, no score. I mean, there could be a possibility that Wes could start on Saturday rather, against Aston Villa in the Cup. But I just can't see that happening. Not at all. So let's move into the fullback position. Let's take off so we can see Vlad's lovely face. So in terms of the first team fullbacks, again, a mixed bag, really. There's, in essence, one standout of those 4, I think, in terms of their half-season report. The rest have been very indifferent. If you look at Emerson, for example, I've put Emerson at a C+. There's no doubt he's not the Emerson that we've had 18 months ago. Whether that's just old age creeping up on him, whether that's just a different style of football. But I mean, last year we didn't necessarily see that Emerson that we love to see. We've seen it in fits and starts this season, but I wouldn't think anything consistent. I'd say he's back. Might be the person in front of him, because obviously a fullback is only as good as their winger in front of them, and that's chopped and changed a bit this season. But he's had an average first half of the season. So much so that there's been often the case where he's been taken off and we've actually moved the side around in order to, you know, allow for that substitution to happen, and particularly when it comes to Wan-Bissaka, who I think's he's my star pupil this first half of the season. I think he is, for all the money that we believed that we wasted on the likes of Fulkrug and people like that, he's been an absolute bargain. I think he's a brilliant player, and I don't think he knows his best position. It seems he's all over the bloody shop. But I think he's had a really good first half of the season in a side that's performed relatively poorly. I think he's been head and shoulders above most, not just in terms of his play, but his commitment. How many times, he really puts it in to get back. He throws his body on the line to stop a goal, and I really, really rate him as a player. I think he's a really, really good player, and I'm glad we've got him, and I'm looking forward to seeing how a more confident side would work with Aaron Wan-Bissaka in it, because I think you'll see something even more better than we've got now. In terms of Cress, one of the senior prefects of the side, in all honesty, we haven't seen enough of him, to be honest. He's not really doing much. I mean, when you've got a situation where Lopetegui is preferring to play a right back over him, and even someone like Ollie, we'll talk about in a tick, being the sort of the number one replacement really for that left back position, or number two really after Aaron. I think he's doing his senior prefect duties behind the scenes. We'll say that. And then with Vladimir, I mean, he's been in and out. Obviously, he was back in the side over the week with Emerson's injury. He's done all right. Maybe a C plus. Nothing spectacular, nothing to write home about. But I don't really think many people have in this side at all. And that's the key. I think the average score is probably going to be about a C minus, in all honesty, when you look at it across the board. We know he's coming to the end of his contract, or as we offered him the 1-year extension. Yeah, he may well be offered a small contract at the end of that extension, because he's a useful person to have. And then that's up to him whether he wants to move on or stay with the club. And I just want to give Ollie a good mark. He's a new student to the side, and what I like is the fact that we are starting to integrate him a lot more into the side, and that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. My only slight foible, fly in the ointment, is the fact that the position that we're trying to play him in the first team isn't the position he's playing in the under-21s. I'd prefer that gets transitioned back and he gets moved back into that left back or left wing back position, in order to then, when he does go get more game time for the first team, he's already in that mindset. At the moment, for the under-21s, he plays more alongside Lewis Orford, or there's Lewis, him, and Tyrone, and the three of them tend to sort of switch positions, one on the bench, two play, and then vice versa. Now, that might be invariably where Ollie ends up, in that sort of more midfield role. But at the moment, the way he's being incorporated into the first team is more on the left-hand side. So I would prefer if that happened, but I'm only one man. Let's walk into the centre half position. A mixed bag. We've got two of those three. I think are mad as a box of frogs, whatever is the expression, in terms of Jean-Claire and Mavropanos, and they worry the hell out of me, particularly when they're playing together. But if one or t'other is playing up, they're always slightly concern me. I think the rock of the side, obviously, is Max. I think Max has had an okay. I think B plus is a fair result. He's been a steady Eddie. He's played every game in the Premier League this season under Gio Lopetegui. Until that injury, he would have probably played that whole game and would have played every minute of Premier League football under Julien. I still believe there's a rock of a player there, and a player that we can feed off and build off, and that sort of spine starts with him going through the side. Jean Claire has had a strange first half. Our French exchange student, he's had a very strange first half of the season, in and out the side, infighting with the head coach. Lots of strange stuff going on. But when he plays, there's no doubt he's quality, but he hasn't played enough for me at the moment. So I put him at a B minus, maybe a C plus, drop it down to. But in essence, when he plays, and there's no doubt he's very controlling the ball. He can run with the ball. He's very comfortable, and if we can keep him fit, that's what that's for me is critical, is keeping him fit. Because I think there's a really good player there who will grow and grow and grow and grow once we keep a solid back four together. Mavropanos, a little bit of a strange person, isn't he? Always, him and Jean Claire both have a mistake in him, and I think Mavropanos is very much the third wheel, to be honest. I put him down as a C minus. Hasn't really impressed me at all this season. Does a job, but then gets caught out quite easily. But then, to be honest, so is the whole of our defence, in all honesty, if we're looking at it. A special mention to Kalen. Kane hasn't really played much at all. As I said, he's very much the fourth man in this. He's had a few minutes, so give him a C minus, because didn't really do anything when he came on anyway. But wasn't worthy of anything more, I'd say, at the moment. Let's talk about these sort of CDM pivot positions, and looking at the three guys here. Again, a slightly strange, an indifferent, a bitty first half of the season, really, for all three. Maybe not so Thomas, but definitely for Alvarez and Guerrero. Alvarez injured coming into the new season, then having to get back into the side, then getting suspended. Very sort of start-stop, and Guerrero coming into the side and being sort of the number one choice, really, and then very much falling out of favour from the powers that be. Whether that was as a result of a desire to go back to La Liga potentially in January, or whether just a dipping form and a changing formation and a changing way forward, I don't know. But in terms of scores, I think Alvarez, there's something missing about Edson. Since he's come back from his injury, I don't know what it is. He seems to have dropped a yard of pace. He seems to be more panicky on the ball. He seems to be trying to do too much with the ball. Whether that's as a result of how he's been coached, I don't know. But a C minus for him, C plus rather. Guerrero just hasn't worked. The experiment hasn't worked. He's not suited to the Premier League. He's too slow. He's more suited to the La Liga style of football in terms of the pace. I don't mind him coming on and being like, the safety net. If we're ever winning a game, we need to tie in that game, bringing him on as another CDM. But I don't know whether he's happy with that role, in all honesty. As we know, it's been documented the desire to go back to La Liga, potentially Real Betis, for a nominal fee, in essence covering the cost of our signing on fee. Tommy Souček, he's continues to dispel people. He's the captain at the moment. The captain the side against Man City. Obviously, we're bowing out for a few weeks with his fractured foot. And as I've said many a time, when it comes to Thomas Souček, when you talk about players playing for West Ham, you want players who are going to fight for the shirt. You're going to want players who give their all for West Ham. And he does every single time he's on that pitch. We know he's not the most gifted player in the world. He's a lucky player. He's got a knack of scoring a goal. He's got a knack of getting on the end of something. But that's why, not just Lopetegui, that's why Moyes had him in his side continually. Because he's very much very much a head coach, a manager's type of player, dependable. You can put him on and then allow the others to play. But unfortunately, the others just aren't playing at the moment. Let's move into more of the attacking side. We've got our Spanish French exchange student. In terms of Carlos Soler and obviously Lucas. Now, both have had an indifferent half term. I think it's fair to say. We've seen glimpses of both which have been mesmeric, and we've seen glimpses of both which have been awful. And I think that pretty much encapsulates our season so far. Carlos, he got into the side. He struggled a little bit to get into the side. Once he got into the side, seemed to grow into the role, and has had some really good performances. Really good performance. So, I mean, I gave him a B minus. Lucas is pretty much the same when you look at it. He's had some games. I hark back to the Newcastle game where he was first for everything, not just the attacking but defensive. And I think Lucas has a lot on his mind, as you can imagine, and will continue to have a lot on his mind until at least March. Until then, he knows what's happening with his life in terms of his career in football. I think he's been lucky that when there has been opportunity to drop him, there's then been suspensions or injuries to others, which means they haven't been able to drop him. He frustrates the hell out of me as a player because we know what he's capable of. And in terms of, if it was a school report, it's the old application and effort. I think the application can be there, but the effort's not always there, or not always seems to be there. So I've given him a C plus. It's an okay start. It's been average. It's been average, hasn't it? Once you take the good and the bad, and you looked at it, it's pretty much an average season he's had so far. Let's talk about the forwards, or forward three. Then we'll talk about the strikers and forwards more specifically. Let's talk about Jared. Let's talk about Mohamed. Let's talk about Cree. We'll talk about Luis Guilherme slightly differently afterwards. Bowen, Captain Bowen. I think he struggled to maintain a level of performance whilst also being captain. I think that's something he's had to learn to develop, and I think he started to. And then obviously, unfortunately, he got injured. But indeed, playing for half an hour, broken foot as well, fractured foot was pretty impressive. He's always the most out of all of them. I think he's the most, or consistently the most dangerous. Doesn't tend to have much of an off day. Might have a quieter day, but never necessarily an off day. And indeed, when they play in the right position, which is the right side, he's not, for me, he's not a striker. You see the best out of him. So I've given him an A minus. Maybe it's a bit generous, maybe a B plus, but A minus. I think he's been our most consistent attacking force. Because when you look at Kudus, he has some games. I mean, it did not surprise me. He had a really good game against Liverpool. Flashing his knickers. Didn't surprise me in an half decent game against City as well. He flashed his knickers. He just, for me, sometimes frustrates me where his decision making isn't the best. Pretty much for West Ham, give it to Kudus and see what he can do. He always commands more than one player, and I like that. I like a player who commands more than one defender because that means there will surely be an overlap. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to exploit that. So considering also he's missed 5 games as well, I put him at B plus. Could even be a B minus in all honesty. He's our most explosive player, that's for sure. But just that lack of discipline really has hampered his season. If he was still playing those 5 games, we could have had a few more points on the board, for no doubt. And then Cree's been unlucky. We all know his best position. We all know he should be playing at the left side. But unfortunately, that's not always been the case. But when he does play, he always puts 100%. But he hasn't played enough for me at the moment. And that's not a fault of his, that's a fault of the head coach. I put him a B- at the moment, although he had a bloody good game against Man City the other day. And obviously, with Bowen's injury, we'll be seeing a lot more of him going into, obviously, the FA Cup game and the 2 London derbies next week. Luis Guilherme, he came on, had a great cameo the other week. And again, he came off the bench the other day. And I imagine we'll be seeing a lot more of him, possibly even a start maybe for the Aston Villa game on that, to maybe rest Kudus potentially. And I think there's a lot more to come from him. Strikers, forwards, obviously not including Mikel, the Folk and Danny Ings, obviously, particularly Folk has had a very troublesome first half of his West Ham career, in terms of half term of his West Ham career. Just injuries haven't got him going. However, 90 minutes under his belt against Man City and a goal. And it shows, and I thought he had a really good game against City. Some really good link-up play. Something which we're not very used to as West Ham fans is having a forward who can do really good link-up play. And there's no doubt that he can. The flick-ons, the chest downs, and obviously got the goal as well with a half-decent chance. He put it away pretty sharpish at the Etihad. So he gets a C+. There hasn't been enough. And Danny, when he comes on, he gives it his all. C-. But let me know what you think. As I said, I put lots of numbers up and lots of ratings. But my head boy at the moment is Aaron Wan-Bissaka, and my dunce, so to speak, probably Guido Rodriguez. Do you agree with that? Let me know in the comments below. Till next time, take care, stay safe, stay warm, stay humble, keep the faith, and come on, you bloody irons.